So the first question I have for you is how and where did you find wrestling, and in what way would you say it's impacted your life?
So good to be on the show, by the way.
Thank you. Glad to have you.
Yeah, really enjoyed it. What I like about your show is it's almost like you're doing a history of UTC wrestling. You're really encapsulating the different eras and the the kind of the all stars,
Mhm.
out of each one. And like, you've had Buckshaw on here and Herring, and you had a lot, Coach Reeve, and I know I'm missing some, but I've tried. Did you have Tom? You had Tom Sell on, right?
I haven't yet.
You
I've
haven't
been
had Tom
contacted.
Sell. Yeah, he'd be a good one. But anyway, so I love it. So anyway, so good beyond. But so I started. I always kind of. I started as a ninth grader.
Mhm.
Okay, and so, but I have to go back because I had an older brother, and there's an old TV show. I think there's a new one out, but there's an old TV show called The Wonder Years.
Right.
One back in the 80s is the one I'm talking about. And the it was this kid on the show had an older brother who was a few years older than him. And the older brother was constantly harassing the younger brother.
Right.
And so that my older brother, uh, Brian, he's a year and a half older than me. And I can remember, when we were sharing a room, I don't know, he would try to stuff me in between the wall and my bed, and then shove the mattress over it and trap me in that little confined space. And I, to this day, am very claustrophobic.
Mhm.
And in wrestling, I'd never wanted to get rode on bottom. I didn't want anyone having legs on me. I didn't want my wrist tied up. And so I have to say, I started wrestling probably at the age of 3 or 4, just defending myself from my older brother. I mean, he would try to hold me. He was stronger than I was, and he would hold me down, and he would do that thing where he was eating he had 4 starbursts in his mouth, and he'd try to drool and see how close the drool could get to my face, and he'd slurp it back up. And so that was kind of an older brother thing, I think, in the 80s. But anyway, so I have to give my brother, who actually was a very good athlete. Played basketball so I went to high school in Florida at Clearwater Central Catholic.
Mhm.
And so my brother was on that basketball team, and they won state 2 years in a row, which is a big deal. And they had several of their guys go D1 and play basketball. And so, but anyway, so I really wanted to be a basketball player, but I was, a freshman in high school, and I was, 4'11" and 98 pounds, uh, and I tried to be good at basketball. I mean, I went to the camps. I went to Pistol Pete Maravich's camp when he had one, and so it was, you know, I really, I really wanted to be a basketball player, but I wasn't good at basketball. I was very, it's like my golf game. I was extremely average at basketball, and so they had tryouts our freshman year for the JV team, and I've told this story before, but the point guard for the basketball team, his name was Mike Malzahn, and he was the linebacker for the football team. He was just a stocky, strong guy, and he hit me with a no look pass. I was on the wing, and I think it was like a missile, and it knocked me backwards, and I knew that's when I had no chance. So I got cut there, and so the wrestling team for our school was really bad. I mean, we were horrible. We were probably the worst team in the county. And so we were like the bad news bears. The coach of the team was a really nice guy. He was a football coach, but he probably knew 2 wrestling moves.
Mhm.
But he came and had a back then in PE, the wrestling coaches, would come, and you hear people talk about this. But the wrestling coach came in and he had a wrestling tournament in our PE class.
Wow.
Okay. And so none of us knew how to wrestle. I mean, none of us knew how to wrestle. And matter of fact, I think the wrestling team had just started, like, a year or two, like, uh earlier. And so they divided everyone up, and everyone's clowning around, and we're in those old stupid looking P uniforms that, you look like Larry Bird, you know. And so, and all of a sudden it became real. Like, you did not want to lose. I didn't want to lose uh to whoever I was wrestling. And I think it
Right.
was Patrick Corcoran. I think I still remember who it was. And so after that, he said, "Hey, you want to be, on the wrestling team?" And he said, "You can get a varsity letter," which I know that's not a big deal anymore. But back then, having a Letterman's jacket and having the pins on it was a big deal.
Right.
And so I wanted to get I wanted to be I wanted to have 12 varsity pins. That was my goal. And I said, "Oh, well, it doesn't look good for basketball." So I said I can do cross country, um, I could do wrestling, and I played baseball. And so
Mhm.
I thought I could make the baseball team. And I played baseball 3 of the 4 years I was a catcher. And so anyway, so I said, "Yeah, let's do it." And so I was bad. I was bad, but I was trying.
Mhm.
I I mean, I was not good, but I didn't know anything. And but I was giving it everything I had. And so I hadn't won a match, and I was probably 0-15 going to the districts, and I got a bye. And I remember reading the bracket. I didn't even know what a bye was, the first time I saw that. And so I got a bye, and I won my first match, like, by 1 point, 6-5. I won my first match of my career, and I was euphoric. I mean, it was like a
Mhm.
drug. And so, that was the good news. The bad news is that qualified me for the region. So I think back then it went like district, region, state, whatever.
Okay.
And so here I was probably the worst wrestler at the region tournament, but it was me and I think one other guy that qualified from our school. And so I was there, and I was in over my head there, and I got whipped pretty good. And and so so we were bad. And then our sophomore year, I'm sorry, this is a long answer, by the way.
Oh, you're fine.
But my sophomore year, we had a kid, we had one of our teammates, and his dad had a little extra money. And so his dad hired in this big name coach in Florida. Well, he actually had just graduated from college. And his name was Glenn Goodman. And
Okay.
so Glenn Goodman was the first 4-time undefeated Florida state champion. And he wrestled at University of Oklahoma. Tremendous. He was on the Olympic ladder under John Smith.
Wow.
He was usually floating around with it'd be John Smith, John Fisher, and him. I think he beat John Fisher several times. And so he was like 2, 3, 4, somewhere in that ladder. And Glenn, if you're listening to this, I'm sorry if I'm getting that wrong. But he was up there. He wrestled for Foxcatcher, and
Wow.
he was a Pan American gold medalist. I mean, he was it. You can Google him, and there's a match, him wrestling John Smith at the I think the World Team Trials. And
Okay.
I mean, he was amazing, and he was coaching us, and he was still competing. And so that was very challenging for him. But anyway, he took us everywhere. And so my parents were very supportive. Although after the first year, they would ask me occasionally, like, are you sure you want to do this?
Right.
Like, you don't have to do this. I'm like, no, I really like it. And they're like, well, you don't have to do, you know. And my dad was very laid back. He was a great businessman, and he was laid back. And my mom was the feisty one. And so that was a nice combination because my mom would cut me any slack, but my dad wasn't, you know, pushing me to do it because he didn't know anything about the sport. But I think my mother really enjoyed the sport. And so anyway, our team started getting better. We started getting better, and we started beating, some good teams. And then my junior year, we had me and a guy named Sean Moyles, who's very good, placed third in state. And then my senior year, we had 3 state champions, Sean Moyles, Dennis Bonneau, who's a chiropractor in Florida, and Sean's an attorney in Florida, and myself were the 3 state champions. And we had a really tough team. I mean, we placed third in state. We went
Wow.
literally from the worst, and in 3 years we were third in state. And Brandon was a big deal back then. We really wanted to duel Brandon, but they had already set their schedule and everything. But so anyway, that's how I got into it.
Well, kind of building off of that, obviously that state championship, I think it was about 3 or so years after you made the decision to kind of swap out basketball shoes for the wrestling shoes, and get into it. You made the move to UTC. What made you want to pick UTC as a place to continue your academic and athletic career?
Well, as far as the academic side of things go, I was not a great student. And I will tell you, I knew that I didn't like school when I was like in the third grade.
Hmm.
I knew it. I would get sick to my stomach when school would start, like in the summer, and
Right.
there's like 2 weeks before school. I mean, I'd literally get sick to my stomach. I hated school. I hated it, but I knew I needed it. And so I've been historically a very mediocre student. Okay. So that said, I did the normal things and I applied for, a bunch of colleges, but getting into UF was out of the question. That is very tough to get into. And so I applied at Florida State, which is a little easier to get into. And I didn't get into Florida State. And I applied at Auburn because I went to a basketball camp at Auburn and I thought it was a cool place. And so I was I was starting to get declined academically at these different schools. And so at the state tournament, I was probably applying before the state tournament. So at the state tournament, UTC used to recruit down there, and
Hmm.
Mark Allison he was a great recruiter. And he was an assistant coach when I was a freshman. I think he was an assistant. And he's a great high school coach. And but he was a terrific recruiter. And so he really recruited a lot of those Florida guys because he wrestled at Countryside High School, which Countryside was coached by Jared Freyer's dad, Dave Freyer.
Okay.
Dave Freyer coached for he's one of those like 3 decade coaches, was amazing. And so in Countryside High School, which is near Clearwater, Florida, where I grew up, Countryside's program, man, they pumped out some horses. I mean, Coach Freyer was amazing. So I remember Jared Freyer because we used to go and we practice with him and everything. Coach Freyer's warm-ups were harder than our practices because
Wow.
he had you go through this 45-minute thing of neck bridges and this tumbling and all the Coach Reeve kind of stuff. And it was great for you, but it was tough. His warm-up was tough. So anyway, so Mark Allison recruited at the tournament, and then he said, well, you got to come check out UTC. And I'd never heard of it. And honestly, I hadn't really thought much about wrestling in college.
Hmm.
And so I came up to, they used to have this thing, the picnic. And at
Hmm.
the picnic, all the old timers would come and the current team, and they do the kind of the banquet they would hold there. And
Right.
so I went to Villanova for a recruiting trip. because that was near the Foxcatcher farm where my coach would go up train. And so I went there, and that was I met John DuPont. He was very strange. And that was just it was just, you were going to come there and you were going to wrestle, but it didn't feel like much of a family type thing. I applied at Clemson, if I'm not mistaken, but I never went on a recruiting trip there. But anyway, when I came to UTC, here they are, they got this picnic. It seemed like there was, a couple hundred people there, and it was like a family. And then when I left there, I said, this is it. This is where I want to go. I mean, this was it. And that's what, that was it. That was it. I said, this is really, I probably wasn't verbalizing a lot of this, but in my mind, somewhere back there, I was thinking, well, this is a special place, and I want to be a part of this.
A lot of people mention that, especially, Bud Hennenball emphasized it, Charlie Buckshaw,
Yes.
Jeff Ruffalo,
Oh yeah, Roofy. Yeah, Roofy's interview was great.
thank you. A lot of guys, that, especially, I'm sure they'd say the same now. The current era guys say the same, and it'd be said across the board. But the big thing was the hospitality, and
Yes.
I think one thing that's so cool about wrestling in general, and I've seen it the most, with my team, and you look at like UTC, um, is, and Ruffalo said this as well. You could not see somebody for 10 years that was your teammate, but as soon as you see them, you pick up like,
Yeah.
yesterday.
Yes. True.
And I think that helps emphasize that fraternity part of wrestling.
Yes.